Thank you all. This is the morning. It is Easter morning. It is a good day to be with friends and family. It's a good day to celebrate the season. It's a good day to acknowledge the many stories that we bring together on this day, and I'm just so glad you're all here. So, we're here to celebrate Flower Communion and Easter, and we come in a variety of colors and shapes and sizes. Some of us come in bunches. Some of us show up solo. Some of us are cupped inward, and some of us are spread wide. Some of us are old and dry and a little tougher than we look. Some of us are still in bud. Some of us grow low to the ground, and some of us stretch up high to the sun. Some of us feel like weeds sometimes. Some of us are prickly sometimes. Some of us smell good. And all of us are beautiful. We welcome you to this service. If you have not been to an Easter service at a Unitarian Universalist church, you might find that it is a little bit different than what you are commonly used to expect, but we consider that to be a feature, not a bug, and we are so glad that you are here today to celebrate with us. Today I'm going to tell you the story of the first Flower Communion. You may have heard this story before, because I think it's important that each year we teach this story and understand the origins of this very particularly Unitarian Universalist tradition. So, long ago and far away, in the city of Prague, in the land of Czechoslovakia, in the year 1923, there was a church. It didn't look much like a church. It had no bells. There was no spire. There were not even any stained glass windows. It had no organ or piano to make beautiful music. It didn't even have a piano. I guess I anticipated that line. It had no carvings of wood or statues of stone. It had no candles. There was no chalice. It had no flowers. The church did have a few things. It had 4 walls and a ceiling and a floor. It had a door and a few windows. But that was pretty much it. A few wooden chairs. That was all plain and simple. But they also had people who came to it every Sunday. It had a minister, and his name was Norbert Fabian Čapek. He'd been the minister at the Plain and Simple Church for 2 years, and every Sunday, Reverend Čapek went to church and he spoke to the people while they listened, sitting quietly in their little hard wooden chairs. And when he was done talking, they all went home. And that was all. No music, no candles, no food, no coffee or donuts. Oh, so unheard of. Springtime came to the city of Prague, and Norbert Čapek went out for a walk. The rains had come and the birds were singing and flowers were blooming all over the land. The world was beautiful. Then this idea came to him, simple and clear and plain as day. And so the next Sunday, he asked all the people to bring a flower or a budding branch from their home or, the street or a meadow. Bring it to church. Everyone was supposed to bring one. Well, what kind, they said. What color? What size? And he said, no. You choose. Each of you choose, all right? And so, the next Sunday, which was the first day of summer, the people came with flowers of all different kinds and all different sizes. There were yellow daisies and red roses. There were white lilies and blue asters, dark-eyed pansies, and light green leaves. Pink and purple and orange and gold, they just filled the whole church. They filled the vases, and the church didn't look so plain and simple anymore. It was beautiful. Now, as I was reading about this story, I wanted to know so these are European flowers, but here's what I did. I found out what are wildflowers you might bring. If you were in Czechoslovakia, in Prague, and you wanted to bring flowers, you could bring a cornflower. Those are wild. You could bring wild thyme, very pretty. You could bring yarrow, which has medicinal uses. You could bring brown knapweed, which is a very sad name for a very cute little flower. It's very Dr. Seussian. And there's also the fabulously named earth nut pea flower. Purple vetch. And so they put them all into the vases, and the church didn't look so plain and simple. And while they put them in the vases, they sat back down, and then Reverend Chopik spoke to the people while they were listening, sitting quietly in their little hard chairs. And he said, these flowers, they're like us. Different colors, different shapes, different sizes. Each needs its own kind of care, but each beautiful, each important and special, each individual in its own way. And when he was done speaking, the people talked a little bit among themselves, and then they each chose a different flower from the vases before they went home. And that was all. And it was beautiful and plain and simple as the day. And that is what we will be doing here today. I do want to tell you a little bit more about Norbert Chopik. So part of the reason Norbert Chopik started the flower communion, it turns out, is that his people were tired of sitting on the hard little wooden chairs in the blank, empty church with nothing and no music. And they finally said, Norbert, we need some soul. We need something. And that's actually when he came up with the flower communion. And so he was born to a Roman Catholic family in Bohemia, which is that whole area of sort of Eastern Europe. And he was really interested in the priesthood as a kid, but by about age, 15, 16, 17, 18, by the time he went off to college, he was feeling very disillusioned with the church, and he was no longer interested in the Catholic Church. However, he got really into the Baptist church. And you have to keep in mind, Baptist churches at the time were not Baptist churches now. In fact, Baptist churches now are all different kinds and flavors and colors. And at that time, Baptists were very similar to UUs. In fact, they still are in many ways. They had congregational polity, where each congregation makes its own decisions. They considered themselves to be part of the priesthood of all believers, meaning a person from within the pews could become the minister and just step up here. It wasn't some set-aside special thing. So Norbert was very excited about these things, and he was an active evangelist in Europe as he traveled all around. And long story short, it was hard to be as liberal and progressive as he was and still keep a job, even in the Baptist church, which has very liberal bastions. So in 1913, right before he was being charged with heresy, they kept trying to get him to stop speaking. At that time, he was living in Germany. And so right before World War I, he and his wife and their 8 children moved to the United States, where he discovered Unitarian Universalism. Now, shortly after he got to the U.S., his wife passed away. 8 children. And 3 years after he moved to New York, he married Maya Chopik, who was another immigrant from his same area who had moved to New York when she was 19 and gone to the Columbia School and gotten a library degree, and she worked at the New York Public Library. Well, they both found the Unitarian Church and were like, what's all this? They say all the things we believe in. And so they joined. And in 1921, Norbert and Maya Chopik, and their millions of kids by this point, I can only assume, packed everything up and got the American Unitarian Association to help them fund a church startup in Prague. So they went to Prague and they bought this very simple, plain little building at the foot of the Charles Bridge. Oh, yes, I should say that this is the church where they found Unitarian Universalism. It's the Church of Essex County, New Jersey, in Orange, New Jersey. So that's the Charles Bridge in Prague, and that's very fancy and touristy these days. But they bought a little cheap, crappy building by the riverside, and that's where they were. And that's when all this took place. Well, let me just tell you, they didn't stay in the crappy building for that long. They just kept going and growing. They bought bigger and bigger buildings. They finally bought a medieval palace, and then just like, I'm sure it was in great shape, emptied it out and used that as their church building. And in 1930, they were recognized by the government of Czechoslovakia as the official Unitarian Church of Czechoslovakia. So very good movers and shakers. So you know what's coming next. World War II is on the horizon. Chapek is probably not going to be the most popular person. Oh, also, his wife went to ministry school and got her degree and became a minister too, because Unitarians, yay! So at the beginning of World War II, Maya took almost all their kids and went to the United States. She actually went to work at that little church in Orange County as their minister for 3 years. Norbert and his oldest daughter, Maria, stayed in Germany. And he was not popular. His preachings and his writings were dug up, and people were saying things against him, and there were more trials for heresy. And eventually, he and his daughter's house was raided by the Gestapo. And he was arrested. They were charged with the treasonous crime of listening to American or to Allied radio. It's probably worse than that. We're pretty sure he was passing on intelligence, so go Norbert. Sadly, his daughter was released, but Norbert was eventually sent to Dachau. And in 1942, near the end of the year, he was executed there. He lived on what they called the Priesterblock. It's where they put all the ministers and clergy. So, that is Norbert Chapek. And he was a pretty important person. And every time that we celebrate the flower communion, we know that Maya Chapek is the one who brought that service to the United States. And so it's from her words and her stories that has spread across the U.S. and further into all these Unitarian churches. And so each time we do the flower communion, we are living out Maya's memory, and we are honoring the memory of Norbert Chapek. And so that's a pretty important thing. As we know from the story we just told, people brought a flower, and they placed them together, and then they took a different one home. And guess what we're going to do today, guys? We're going to do that. Now, some of you generous souls have already brought many flowers and placed them up here, and thank you. And I hope that a few of you still have flowers, because otherwise it's going to be a very short gathering of the flowers. But that's okay. We'll just go as we do. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you have a flower to add to our bounty, please come down the middle aisle and just go back to your seat on the outside aisles, any of them. And now I'm going to just come down there and kind of help you out, and we're going to go from there.
Each of us is like a flower with a delicate beauty uniquely our own. We may be like sunflowers, turning always toward the light.
May our lives bloom like the flowers.
We may be like night blooming cereus, only displaying our fragrant petals when it is dark and we think no one can see.
May our lives bloom like the flowers.
We may be hothouse flowers, far from our native lands, cautiously tended within a harsh and unfamiliar climate.
May our lives bloom like the flowers.
We may be gray-headed like dandelions, eager to launch the new generation with the first strong gust of wind, past our own bright youth, but ready to pass our wisdom on in precious, gossamer-carried seeds.
May our lives bloom like the flowers.
Some of us, sometimes, spring up overnight and fade in the hot glare.
May our lives bloom like the flowers.
Some of us, sometimes, are roses, slowly assembling petal after tightly wrapped petal, and revealing our full glory only when everything is in place.
May our lives bloom like the flowers.
Sometimes we are roadside weeds, loveliness bursting improbably from dust and debris.
May our lives bloom like the flowers.
May we offer our beauty with the simplicity of flowers, expecting no recognition, hoping for nothing, giving out of what we are, and knowing it is enough.
May our lives bloom like the flowers.
Amen.
So, it is time to get a flower to take home. Now, in this church, there has been a tradition in the past of doing flower communion on Mother's Day, which is beautiful, and you pick a flower and then you hand it to the next person. But here's what I'm going to invite you to do today. I am going to invite you to do it old school, like Norbert Chopik, and I want you to take home whichever flower you choose. If you want someone to choose a flower for yourself, just tell them, that's fine. But I want you to come up here and take a look at these flowers and then pick one that speaks to you. For our closing words, I know, I couldn't resist. It was a kitty cat and flowers. Sorry. I knew you would all be suckers too. I knew it. We're all fools together. I love it. These words are from Norbert Chopik. He wrote them the day before, we believe, his life ended. It is worthwhile to live and fight courageously for sacred ideals. Oh, blow evil winds into my body's fire. My soul you will never unravel. Even though disappointed 1,000 times or even fallen in the fight, though everything would seem worthless, I have lived amidst eternity. Be grateful, my soul. My life is worth living. One who was pressed from all sides but remained victorious in spirit is welcomed into the choir of heroes. One who overcame the fetters, giving wing to the mind, is entering into the golden age of the victorious. Norbert Chopik was a holy fool. Let us let him lead the way. Go in peace, be foolish. Amen.